Almost ready. Okay, Commissioner Hall, we are recording.
Great, thanks. Good morning. My name is Zach Hull. I'm the chair of the Salem Public Art Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order on November 9th. Welcome to everyone. Maybe we'll go around real quick and just introduce ourselves. We have a guest with us today. Again, my name is Zach Hull, I'm the chair.
Susan Apak, vice chair. Oh, Barbara, you're muted.
That's just in case the dog barks. Barbara Sellers Young, a member.
Spencer Emmerich, commissioner.
Your turn, Eduardo.
Eduardo, a member as well.
Keith Bondog-Wynn, Public Works staff. And Mark.
Thank you, Mark Weinstein, Assistant City Attorney. I represent the Salem Public Arts Commission.
And I'm Steve Hunter with First Baptist Church here in Salem.
Great, thank you. We're going to hear from Steve here in a moment, but is there any other public comment today? Any other attendees wishing to talk about anything that's not on the agenda? Okay. We need to approve the consent agenda for the minutes for the September 26th meeting, today's agenda, and the special public hearing application from the 13th of October. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have a comment before we approve. The agenda for today still lists Chris Darcy as a board member.
Correct. Thank you,
And-
Susan.
Sure. And also there was something about, I mean, not to be nitpicky, but on the minute, the agenda from the last meeting, the October 12th meeting, I don't know if this makes a difference or not, but it just says on that October 12th meeting agenda, it says next meeting, October 12th. And it should have said November 9th.
Okay. Noted.
So maybe for the next agenda, we'll update the board member names.
Sure.
With
And
those,
it says, you know, Chris Darcy chair, so it maybe it should be changed. And, you know, before it goes, you know, and then put back on the website. I think it should be corrected. So maybe we could approve it with corrections. Is that something we have the option to do?
Keith?
Okay.
Yeah.
I so move that we approve the consent agenda with the named corrections.
Great. Does anyone want a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Show of hands are aye.
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda is approved with the changes noted by Susan. Okay, Keith, you wanted to review the public hearing procedures for public murals with us.
Yes. The procedures were emailed out with agenda. And the quick, and oh, excuse me. So what we're going to do, let me share screen. Are we all seeing the screen?
Mhm.
Okay. So the procedures are opening the public hearing by the commissioner. Then we're going to make sure there's no conflicts of interest. Then I am going to present the staff report, including a recommendation. Then the commissioners can ask any questions. And then Steve Hunter will be able to provide his presentation. The neighborhood association chose not to speak or take a position on this matter. So that is will not happen. And then if there's any additional public testimony, However, I didn't receive any additional requests for anyone to join the meeting to provide testimony. And then we're going to ask if there are any additional questions for Steve, and then we can close the public hearing. And after we close the public hearing, then we'll have a motion on the proposed mural by a SPAC member, and then we'll proceed for deliberations and then call for the vote.
Great. Thanks, Keith.
You're welcome.
Okay, so with those procedures in mind, I'm going to now open the public hearing for the proposed mural at 695 Liberty Street, also known as the Cars mural. So following our procedure, let me ask, are there any conflicts or ex parte contacts that any commissioner needs to disclose at this time? Okay, hearing none. Keith, can you give us the staff presentation, please?
Yes. Can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes.
Excellent. The city of Salem received an application by Steve Hunter, representative of the Salem First Baptist Church, for an existing mural at 695 Liberty Street Northeast. The property in question is zoned for zoned central business district, and the painting is currently installed on the south side, south-facing facade of a commercial building off of Liberty Street. This is just a legal description of the artwork. I'm going to read it just for our audiences. The artwork consists of a painting on the south-facing exterior wall of a commercial building at 695 Liberty Street Southeast, Salem, Oregon. The building is located in a high-traffic area of the Central Business District. The mural is sited on the back wall of the building and immediately adjacent to the parking lot. The mural is represented as being approximately 37 feet long and 13 feet tall on the exterior wall that is represented as being approximately 165 feet long and 13 feet tall. The painting is visible to the public from Liberty Street Northeast and from the building's parking lot. The painting is more particularly described in the photographs attached below. As you can see on the top photo, it is of two cars. It is viewable from the parking lot. And on the bottom photo, you see that it is it shares a parking lot with First Loop Plus, which is a subsidiary of First Baptist Church. The painting can be seen driving along Liberty Street Northeast to the north, and you can see that there are pedestrian access as well through the sidewalk. This is a closer up version of the mural from the parking lot. And what I'm going to do now is run through the public mural requirements that the city of Salem has established. There are two groups of criteria. One is outlined in Salem Revised Code Chapter 15, dealing with public art. And the second guidelines are set by the Salem Public Art Commission in its guidelines, policies, and procedures. Again, I'm going to read through just for our audiences at home. SRC 15.010 is a definition of a public mural. A public mural means an original two-dimensional work of visual art comprised of paint, ceramic, or glass tiles or tesserae executed by hand directly upon or affixed directly to an exterior wall of a building, which has been approved by the Salem Public Art Commission and accepted by the city into its public art collection pursuant to this chapter. A public mural is not an original work of visual art if it is mechanically reproduced or computer generated and printed on a base that will be attached to the wall, such as, by way of illustration but not limitation, limited images digitally printed on vinyl. SRC 15's public mural program intent and purpose are outlined below. It is to enhance the aesthetics of the city. It is to provide avenues for original artistic expression. It's to encourage community participation in the creation of original artwork and hopes to reduce the incidence of graffiti and other crime. There are 6 minimum standards outlined under the mandatory criteria of SRC 15. The mural must remain in place for not less than 7 years. It cannot be installed on non-historic, it can only be installed on non-historic, non-contributing buildings. Cannot be on residential buildings, but mixed-use buildings are okay. It cannot include electrical, moving components, or lights. It must be in a location accessible to the public, and an easement must be conveyed to the city from the property owner. SPAC guidelines, policies, and procedures outlines 11 additional criteria, some of which overlap with the SRC 15. The first criteria is the strength of the artist's concept and originality of the work, the demonstrated craftsmanship of the artist, the appropriateness of scale to the wall, and the appropriateness of the scale to the neighborhood. We're looking for architectural, geographical, social, cultural, and/or historical relevance of the mural to the site itself. We look for support from the owner, neighborhood, and businesses. The ability to complete the mural on time and on budget. It can only be in non-historic, non-contributing buildings, not on single-family, duplex, or multifamily dwellings, and not to include electrical, moving components, or lights, and in a location accessible to the public. What I have outlined here are the standards on the left-hand side under SRC 15, as well as on the right-hand side, the applicant and how they have met the criteria. As you can see on the right-hand side, the legal is working to finalize an easement that lasts 7 years. The painting is not in a historic district and not on a residential building. The painting does not have any electrical, moving components, or lights. It is visible to the public from Liberty Street Northeast, and the easement agreement is currently being drafted with the legal department. The SPAC guidelines, as you remember, there's 11. The strength of the artist's concept and originality. We find that the artwork is original and it's reflective of the community. The artist is a local Salem artist. The scale of the painting is appropriately encompasses a portion of the wall, and is appropriate for the surrounding businesses and neighborhood. The design celebrates the automotive industry here in Salem, which is a geographical, social, cultural, and historical relevance to the site. And we have a lot of support from the public via public comment received in support of the mural by neighboring businesses, residents, and the general public. And the mural is complete at this time. Again, it is not in a historic district. There are no electrical or moving components or lights, and it is accessible to the public from Liberty Street Northeast. The public comment period was posted October 5th to November 7th. The posting was included at the site itself on the next to the mural. The city received 20 emails in support, no emails against. There was one detailed phone message in support of the mural, no messages against. And the Can-Do Neighborhood Association chose not to take a position on this topic. There are 3 decision alternatives. The first is to approve the proposal as submitted by the applicant and indicated on the drawings or photos, approve the proposal with conditions to satisfy specific guidelines, or deny the proposal based on non-compliance with guidelines in SRC 15. And we need to indicate which guidelines are not met and the reasons the guideline is not met. At this time, do you have any questions regarding the staff report? Okay, then I will turn it over to Zach.
Okay, so if the commissioners don't have any questions for Keith, then let's go ahead and hear from the applicant. Steve, if you'd like to give us your testimony, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you today. I realize that this is a little bit of an unusual situation where most of the things that Keith read there have to do with an application for a mural to be made in the future, whereas this one is already done and we're bringing it to you. And so I thought maybe a little history behind this would be helpful for you to understand how we got to this point. First, a little bit of history about this area, if you don't know. The church, First Baptist Church, has been on this block since 1864 and continues to thrive here. The building that I'm in right now, where our offices are at, used to be a building in which Capital Chevrolet started. That's along Commercial Street, and in fact, we have in this building we've kept pieces of the original building of their service area. To the north of us, which is the block that the murals are on, that had longtime ownership by DeLon Motors. They had a variety of different, for those that have been around Salem for a long time, they had a variety of different makes and models of cars that they sold there, everything from Hondas to Oldsmobiles to Mitsubishis, and kind of goes on and on. The church bought that property. Well, DeLon left. It became Lithium Motors. Lithium Motors operated on it for a few years before they moved out to along the Parkway. The church purchased the property, most of that block that encompasses that area in late 2015. There was a loop center that was on it that hadn't been operating for a few years. And so the church decided to reopen use that loop center and use it as a opportunity to work with people with barriers to employment, primarily people coming out of incarceration. And so we've been doing that since July of 2016. And so that's kind of brings us to the point of where the murals started. One of the first, I was the one that opened up the business and helped start the business for on behalf of the church, and continue to have management responsibilities over it, though not day-to-day operations. But when we opened it, we hired some staff, and one of those staff members is the artist that painted those murals. His name is David Campos. He no longer lives in the area. He lives in the Portland area currently, wasn't able to join us. Was one of those instances of when you enter into a situation, you don't know what all the outcomes are going to be, but the outcome of this and my relationship over the last 6 years with David had been what I would call life-changing. David spent most of his life after the age of 17 in our penal system. Moving around, he had been in his career as in that system. He was in every one of our state institutions, and was not always a model prisoner there. He came to us through the Marion County Sheriff's reentry program. They referred him to us the first day after he had gotten released. He came, we visited, we hired him, and started him on his track to reentering society and reentering the workforce. As I got to know David over that period of time, and we still stay in contact, found out that it was his artwork that really helped him to be able to make some changes that he needed to make in his life in prison, in terms of being somewhat violent and not one to necessarily recognize authority. He had grown up in his childhood enjoying art. He had left it, found it again when he was in prison, and that was a thing that began his road to be able to get out of incarceration. So we saw an opportunity here where if you came to the store here, you would see the interior of the store is filled with a variety of illustrations of various car model emblems. He painted all those inside of our building. So then we moved and we had this big blank wall across our parking lot, and decided that we wanted to put something on it instead of just staring at this big ugly wall. And so the first painting that he painted was the one with the 1969 Camaro and all of that background. And he painted that pretty much by freehand. He had sketched it out. We threw it up on the wall with a projector. He did a little bit of sketching on the wall, and then the rest of it was freehand. When that was done, then we got a lot of comments from folks. And if you know anything about cars and pony cars in the 60s, there's always a fight between Camaros and Mustangs. And so we ended up having to put the Mustang on we wanted to put another mural on, so we chose the Mustang as the second one to just complement that kind of discussion that goes on with the car folks. So we had David paint those. We've maintained them. People enjoy them. We admittedly we didn't realize that we were doing it, but we ran afoul of the city of Salem because they came in and they said those were considered as advertising for our business, which that was never our intent. It was just, let's beautify some things around here. And so that brings us, over the last couple of years, we've gone through the process and brings us back to here to ask you to be able to help us keep those by placing them in the public art collection for the city of Salem. Our belief, it represents that area of the city well, and the historic nature of that these 2 or 3 blocks on the north end of the downtown area. So more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you, Steve. We just checking my so we don't have a neighborhood association today. I don't think there's any other members of the public to provide testimony. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, but I think at this point we're going to close the public hearing and we'll move on to discussion. So I'll now close the public hearing and we'll proceed to deliberation. Steve, thanks again for your testimony. And so now for the commissioners, I'd like to call a motion to begin discussion of the mural at 695 Liberty Street. If someone will.
I move that we move to discussion.
Thank you, Barbara. And a second.
I'll second it.
Great.
I'm sorry, Chair Hall.
Yes.
I'd ask, the motion shouldn't be to move to discussion. There needs to be an actual motion that you're discussing. So I don't think we need to go to,
Okay.
Before you start a discussion, you need to know what it is you're discussing. I believe Keith has a proposed motion for somebody on the commission, one of the commissioners to propose as a motion that would then be seconded, and then you would have a discussion about that motion.
I
Great,
can read
I'm
that
just-
motion for you.
Okay, great.
All right. The motion, so if you would like, a commissioner may move to approve the proposed mural as submitted by the applicant and accept the proposed mural into the city's public art collection, contingent upon the conveyance of a public mural easement to the city from the owners of the building upon which the mural is located in a form approved by the city attorney.
So, sorry, I'm reading from the script that you sent me earlier, Keith.
Yes,
It sounds like the motion you just made is the motion to approve it, which from my understanding comes a few steps later. And what I'm reading as step 11 is call a motion to begin discussion. So Mark, am I in error to, or shouldn't we discuss before we approve?
So you have to make a motion. So
Yep.
you have a variety of motions you can make. The motion could be to approve the mural as proposed by the applicant. Basically, the motion Keith gave.
Yep.
It could be a motion to disapprove the mural, or move to approve the mural with the following modifications. You have to have a motion that's seconded, and then you begin discussions on that motion.
Okay,
And then you vote at the end of that discussion whether or not to approve the motion.
got it.
So before you discuss something, you have to know the motion you are discussing.
Okay,
okay.
that's fine. Would anyone like to propose to the motion as described by Keith a moment ago?
I would propose the motion to go forward as described by Keith.
And I second that motion.
Okay, so I think to be clear, we're now going to discuss the motion to approve the mural. Is that correct?
The motion to approve the mural as submitted by the applicant, contingent upon conveyance of a public mural easement by the owners of the building in a form that is acceptable to the city attorney's office.
Understood.
Basically, that's the heart of it, but it is the verbiage proposed by Keith.
Okay. Thoughts from commissioners on the motion? Susan?
I have two questions. First, Mark, what you just said, can you be a little more specific about what that easement is going to entail for the owners of the mural and city? And I'm not sure I understand exactly what that is.
So it's a legal document. It's a form that we require of everybody. It's part of our code. We were required because we are accepting the mural into the Salem's Public Art Commission. There needs to be an easement giving, putting this mural on somebody else's property, giving people access to view it, and a bunch of other legal things. It also requires the grantors to maintain the mural. It gives the city the right to require removal of the mural if it's being damaged and not being cared for and kept in its original condition. It's a legal document that the city requires and that our code requires in order to make sure that the public mural that's being put up is the public mural that's being approved by this commission, and it's being maintained, and gives the city some rights to protect it and also protect the city.
And why wasn't that done previous to this hearing?
We've been in discussions with the grantors, and we believe we have a final document that is, if the commission approves the mural, will be finalized.
Is that standard procedure that it's not done before the commission approves it? Or is that this an exception?
It can be done either way. If we believe that there's going to be barriers to obtaining the mural, we like to see it concluded beforehand. If we believe that the parties have a meeting of the minds pending the commission's outcome, it's not legally, it can be done either way.
Okay, and one more question. Sorry, I don't mean to hog it, but I'll ask my questions and let everyone else talk. There was discussion and Steve mentioned also that they were informed that the mural might be advertising. And I just wanted to kind of understand why it was perceived as advertising at a certain point, and where that changed over, or just that story.
I can't provide the commission with information on that. I was not part of that discussion. I don't have that information here today. What I can say is this: if this mural is not, if this painting, I'm going to leave it at that. I was not part of that discussion. I can't intelligently inform the commission as to what information was conveyed regarding if it was perceived as a sign or if it was specifically used as an advertising. At a minimum, this wall painting, if it's not a mural, would be considered a sign under our sign code and regulated as such there. I don't know what discussion was had or what verbiage was used, if the phrase specifically advertising was there. I was not part of those conversations and can't address that to the commission.
No, it's just a lot of the letters in support, which were wonderful, and I'm totally in support of the mural. But a number of the support letters did mention, oh, it was going to be advertising, and that the city was going to take it down. And maybe that's something that we can discuss later on in the agenda when we talk about murals. But just wanted to see if there was any answer on that. Thank you, Mark.
Does any other commissioners have any thoughts or comments at this point? Okay. So hearing none, and I'm feeling my way through the process here, obviously. So I think then we can go ahead and vote on the motion. We've heard discussion. Is that correct, Keith, Mark? Yep.
Yes, if you want to call if the commission's in agreement with the matter being called for a vote, that would be the next step.
Yeah, I guess I'll just state that, I support the motion. I think as Steve has spoken to, the mural reflects the history of the neighborhood, relates to the history of the neighborhood, and is sort of organically emergent from a variety of different communities there. So it appears to meet the criteria to me. So I am in support of it. So if there are no more comments, then I guess I'll go ahead and call for a vote in support of the mural with the conditions noted by Keith regarding the approval of the easement. All those in favor of, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the motion passes unanimously with those in attendance today.
May I make a quick statement, Mr. Hall?
Yes.
I'd just like to thank the commission for approving that, and we appreciate that support, and we have seen drafts of the documents that the city attorneys have drafted, and we see no problem with doing that.
Great.
So there's nothing there, but I don't see anything to impede us.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here again, Steve. Appreciate it. Okay. So
Thanks for the invitation. And thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome to hang out and listen to the rest of the meeting, or okay. So
All right.
we're gonna moving on now to back to our agenda. The next item for discussion is the SPAC visioning discussion, which I think you all received. There were some write-ups, some notes that Keith sent around that Courtney Knox Bush had prepared after our last meeting. I don't know if you've all had a chance to review those. I went through the notes and basically kind of just reorganized them into a framework that I thought we could maybe use to talk about how we are thinking about what we do. I don't know where people want to start. If there are particular questions about what Courtney wrote up, or do folks want to start with the deck I put together? Is there any comment on that, I guess, from anyone right now?
I think we should start with the deck you put together
Okay.
because it takes us through a thoughtful process regarding it.
So let's start with that, but remaining aware that we've got the sort of detailed notes supporting that deck that Courtney did for us. And I don't know if Keith, are you driving? Are you able to present
Yep.
that?
Yes, sir.
I think for context, every year SPAC delivers a report to Salem City Council. And so I was kind of trying to frame, our work in the context of what our sort of roles and responsibilities are, how far they go, how far they don't go, and sort of what kind of recommendations might we think about making to City Council in this upcoming presentation, which I believe is going to take place in January, and sort of incorporate, what we're doing, what we think, what we want to be doing, and where the city might validate or participate in that. So this is just a draft for try aid our discussion. It's totally open for feedback and editing and everything else. So Keith, if you can, I don't know. So this is just kind of a reminder of some things that are in the code and this is just, from the code, the Salem City Council recognizes that visual arts contribute to and provide experiences that enrich and better the social and physical environment of the community, and desires to foster an advancement of the visual arts within the city of Salem, which a few slides later, I kind of call that basically a mission statement. Like there's a mission. The city council wants to do this. They want to advance visual arts in the city of Salem. So they've created SPAC, that's us. And then there are these sort of responsibilities laid out that we do. This is again just kind of a recap, but we have selection roles. Keith, there we go. We have this advisory role on the management, execution, installation, and placement of public art. We recommend guidelines and establish procedures for maintenance and management. So that's kind of what we do. And what isn't, so I think we do have this mission that City Council's given us to foster the advancement of visual arts. I don't know that the city has a vision for public art in Salem. It's not in the sort of planning documents that I've seen. And so this seemed to be a moment where we could recommend that council consider a vision for public art in Salem. And then as a sort of, high level concept that we could kind of orient ourselves around and sort of hang the mission that council's already given us under. And so this was a proposal that I kind of came up with, which is an evolution of a dialogue that already is happening in previous documentation and in the code. The mural code specifically addresses accessibility. Last year's annual report talks about accessibility, and it's a pretty strong concept to, I think, strong enough to hang all of the other things we've talked about underneath it, which is kind of what the next slides talk about, sort of why accessible public art. So this is sort of, I guess we can pause here for a minute. We can talk, well, let's talk a little bit more about why that phrase. And then I guess I'm interested in feedback about whether this group feels like it's an appropriate thing to do to recommend to City Council the adoption of a vision for public art in Salem. And then I'd like feedback from Keith and Mark, I guess, about whether or not they agree that that's something that recommendation is appropriate for SPAC to make. Keith, can we go to the next slide real quick? So these are some examples of where this concept of access is already spoken to. Again, it's in the mural, in the context of public murals. The city has identified that the public interest includes enhancing aesthetics, providing avenues for original artistic expression, and providing edification through access to original works of art. Last year in SPAC's annual report, we sort of framed it as providing and encouraging equitable access to historic, cultural, and artistic resources as fueling and fostering a sense of pride and connection to the community. So I guess my point here is we're not inventing this concept out of whole cloth. It exists. It's something that's been spoken to. If we can look at the next slide. And this is where we start to, and this is, again, just me trying to come up with a framework to sort of think about what that means. What does access mean? And I think this begins to kind of give us a framework to hang all the different concepts that we've been talking about, that public art is visible and diverse, right? Sort of the high level concepts there. Visible meaning that people can see it where they are. I think, the mural program, the street painting program, the public art program, the goal being you can go out and see the art. You can see it where you live, you can see it where you drive, you can see it where you play. This is sort of the purpose of public art, is that it's accessible and viewable and fundamentally local in the neighborhoods. That it's findable, searchable, communicated, promoted, understood, that again, part of it being visible, and that it's a sort of another facet of visibility is that we maintain it, we know where it is, we know what kind of condition it's in, we have sort of internal visibility on the artwork, so it isn't misplaced or lost or damaged and that kind of thing. And then another aspect of accessibility is that it's diverse. It's accessible to different groups based on their backgrounds, their age, race, religion, gender, and then also sort of taste, right? Like different people like different kinds of things. We're going to see more of that, I suspect, as we look at other public mural proposals. Like different people are going to find different things interesting, and that's going to be sort of part of this dialogue of diversity and of artwork. Like, what is art and how much diversity is everyone comfortable with? Anyway, these sort of high level concepts, if we go one more slide or two more slides, this is where the work that Courtney did with us starts to emerge. And I just tried to take her concepts that she had noted and hang them under these ideas to sort of stress test that framework and see if it held up. Sorry, Mark, I can see your emails popping up on Keith's screen.
Sorry.
So this is this is sort of the framework. So I'm going to stop here and just sort of back up, get feedback from people and see, if the notion of recommending a vision of accessible public art to the city council is something that people think is interesting, supported, and get Keith and Mark's feedback. But first, any comment from anyone? I'll stop talking.
I have a question about what when you talk about accessible and access, is this in viewers and people who are viewing the public art, members of the community who are seeing these things once they're done, or is it, something that I might be thinking about is participation, is access for community to participate in creating the murals and having the murals in their community and promoting, what they would like to see in their particular neighborhood. But
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was your intention or what, and also how are these things not, how is this diversity different than what is actually happening right now? What gap do you see that filling?
I'm not sure. Yeah, in my opinion, yes, the two are, that notion of community involvement is part of the accessibility dialogue. I think where I'm headed is, we have a lot of discussion about different kinds of things we want to do. And what has been missing for me is a kind of unified way of talking about those and where they fall in all of the things that we could pay attention to and do. And so this, I guess, is kind of a preliminary exercise to prioritization, right? So like, here's all these things that we talk about. We want to improve the website. We want to do this. We want to, how do we kind of group those things and think about them and locate them? It's because I think in strategic frameworks, so it's useful for me. I don't think the city has a vision, at least that I can see anywhere. So I think that is a gap that could be filled. And I think it begins to open up a dialogue about specifically around accessibility, both from a community participation standpoint and from a funding standpoint. Where is the public art located in the city? Is there enough of it? Are we fulfilling this? We as a city fulfilling this vision of there being art in all the neighborhoods, or is the art all located downtown and concentrated in one area? And I think, it starts to create a dialogue about the need to expand public art outside of the downtown area and more into the neighborhoods, which is sort of what was in my thinking which can be done both through acquisition and funding, but also, to your point, Susan, through encouraging more people to develop street paintings and encourage more businesses to contribute to murals. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what I was thinking about.
I have a question. As I understand it, the funding for the public art primarily comes within the percentage that is put forward into new buildings or updating of buildings, etc.
Yep.
So if you were, say, a neighborhood association in South Salem, you wouldn't have necessarily funding to actually do something to create a public art, say, in a local park.
That's
or as part of a bus stop. I'm thinking of what they have in Portland with, in terms of the light rail, they have all of this public art in and around the light rails. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Yes, to a degree here. Yeah, so mostly it's public buildings that have that percent that gets funding to public art. I think I dropped the ball. I've been meaning to send you that example from up in Portland where they incentivize developers to contribute to either sculpture or a mural on development they're doing. So there are other avenues, and I think I need to send that to you guys. I think that is kind of probably the most likely source to get art outside of the downtown core, because that incentivizes people with the money to make their development easier to do by providing pieces of artwork. Just from my experience.
Yeah,
So
I don't
just
think
so
that.
I'm
Go ahead.
clear that neighborhood associations are never approached or asked at all about the kind of art that because they themselves have a own cultural history and identity, etc. So, okay,
And
So-
they also, I'm sorry, Barbara, are you finished? Sorry.
I'm finished.
Okay. And just to follow up on neighborhood associations, they also have funds, that can be used. I mean, we used our funds to do the street painting, and then we were reimbursed by Travel Salem, which was great. But that means we just have those funds to make decisions. But also, there are even one of the letters that was in support of the Cars mural said, gee, I've got a wall in my building and my, on my business that I would love to see a mural. So, I mean, again, it's the discussion of murals, which we might do next. But I'm just wondering in relation to what the strategic plan and what maybe even expanding the role of what SPAC does in terms of advising, maybe not just sticking with, the acquisition of art in public for the public buildings. Maybe we bring this, maybe we have some kind of a public meeting the way that they did have it a couple of years ago in Pringle Hall, or even if we needed to do it on Zoom, and just ask for public input, sort of lay something out for people, hear what people want, because I'm still getting the impression that people don't understand what it is that we do, that we're just a yay or nay entity, and that we're going to take the murals away, and that we're, there's a misperception that we represent Salem and the people of Salem and what they want. So, I think it's great that, to get this kind of language nailed down, but I'd also like to see a greater discussion of what the people of Salem would like to see the commission be, in terms of, there's no other arts commission other than us for the city of Salem. And there's a lot of rich art and arts organizations that go on here. And maybe there may be an expansion of what our role is something we should explore. It's kind of a big thing to do, but.
Yeah, I think that's, that ultimately that will be, city council has the power to expand or not expand our role. So that'll be something that the outcome of that kind of meeting would, I guess, be another kind of recommendation to city council. Like we asked for some community feedback, and here's what we heard, and the community's asked SPAC to do more. Will the city approve that? I guess would be the path for that. I wanted to just circle back to something, Barbara, that you had mentioned, that, from what I can tell, there's sort of a bottom up and a top down approach to proliferating public art in Salem, right? And so the top down approach is funded trust, public art trust fund money that goes into new city buildings, and SPAC has a role in that selection process. Then there's sort of what I guess I'd call community funded art projects, which are the street murals and the wall murals, street paintings and wall murals, which are paid for by the communities, the neighborhoods, the businesses. SPAC also has a role in looking at those and sort of making sure they comply with the requirements. And so, both of those things ideally would be increased and grown if we're going to succeed in sort of seeing more public art in Salem. So getting more sort of bottom up community involvement and commitment to funding. So I guess it's not to say that neighborhood associations don't have a role or aren't consulted, because I think they do and are. But from the bottom up standpoint, there's a communications effort to let folks know that this is something they could do in their communities and in their neighborhoods. And from the sort of top down side, it's soliciting feedback from neighborhood associations when SPAC is looking at or considering a mural, like today, for example, right? The neighborhood association was invited, didn't take a position, and so they didn't come, but they weren't excluded from that. So I just want to sort of clarify. I think there's two roles for neighborhood associations to play. And we could probably do a better job of communicating with them about that. But
can I just say I really appreciated and like the combination of concepts that are in your PowerPoint presentation from visibility and diversity, because I think that both of those, as you articulated, allow us to have a conversation that goes further. It's very clear, and I think it's clear because those words have a really specific meaning that is part of our cultural zeitgeist. So thank you for that. And I also thought how you articulated them in the next slide with local, knowledgeable, and maintained were all important aspects of it, because one of the things that you mentioned at the last meeting was wanting to know more about what is where. And one of the things I did was visit the website, which is a great website because it tells you, at least in the downtown core area, where everything is and who painted it and when and what was the acquisition. And one of the things I noted was that a lot of those were acquired through the Mayor's Invitational. And I was just curious about that. Does that still exist? I tried to do an online search to see if it was still in existence, and maybe it is or maybe it isn't. But anyway, thank you very much for those two slides, because I think you bring our ideas together.
Yeah, and again, this is just to help us. There's not really it's a frame that we can continue to discuss, to stress test and see if the things we do hang under it appropriately. Further on in that presentation is a more direct conversation about funding. And as Spencer pointed out, arts funding is tied to improvements, where improvement is defined as city buildings. So, in the context of a 300, of a large bond measure, that's, I don't know its status at the moment, but this could be a time to discuss, how would the Public Art Trust Fund be additionally funded? And if you scroll down, Keith, this is kind of where the code language is that, the city is going to dedicate 0.5% of the total eligible cost of all improvement projects, where that's defined as a city building. It's fine, and it sort of qualifies it as over $100,000, and it's not just remodel. It's sort of okay. An avenue to increasing funding, and this would be another, I think, possible recommendation to the city would be to, and this is not in any, this is just sort of me taking a cut at it, but in the next slide, if you expand the definition of improvements to be other things, then you would obviously get more funding in the trust fund, and then there would be a relationship between where the funding came from and where the art went, right? So you would not only be tying it to city buildings, but you'd be seeing it on streets and parks. So that could be a way, is that something the city's interested in doing? I don't know. Is that something we're interested in recommending? I don't know. So this is, and so Mark, I can see that you're chiming in. So maybe Keith and Mark, I'm curious to know, within our sort of making recommendations to council, and I don't know if that's appropriate in the annual report or if there's another channel that those recommendations should flow in, but I guess to your question just now, potentially, yes. Like SPAC might be interested in recommending the expansion of public arts funding by expanding the definition of improvement.
But not in
Obviously-
January though, right?
What's that?
But not in January.
Probably not in January.
Okay.
But I'm just, this is part of the broader dialogue of, how do we increase public art? How do we advance the visual arts in Salem? Well, you're gonna increase the bottom up participation in communities, and you have the opportunity to increase funding. How would you do that? I don't know, but this is one avenue. Is this within our purview to make a recommendation like this?
Oh, that's a question.
I guess, Mark, I'm looking at you.
Well, and what I'm also talking about, it goes along those lines, is like these would be code changes into the development code, which is a great question, Zach. Do we have the ability to make a recommendation of a code change?
Yep. And the answer may be no, in which case, let's get that out now and we'll stop talking about it. But if we can make a recommendation like this, then would we want to?
I would.
One of the things we are SPAC is under Peter Fernandez as the director, and this is something that I have not brought to his attention specifically in terms of advancing code changes to the council, especially in a January annual meeting. My understanding is that there is potential code. There might be a motion from a city councilor in the next month or two regarding directing staff to review the mural code vis-a-vis the sign code and see if there's any reconciliation we can do between those to figure out how we can move forward with like 3D murals. And so that's one avenue that is being presented. A city councilor directs staff to do research. This could potentially be a way to do that, but I'm not too sure about that specific process.
To me, it makes sense that if we are an advisory board, and especially if we do get feedback from the community about things like this, that we can make recommendations, should be able to make recommendations to, I don't know, to staff or to whether, it seems like, I've heard about that the, city councilor is going to propose that especially for the mural, the cherry mural, that it be able to be painted on the silos. But, should it also come from us as an advisory board? I mean, to me, it sort of makes sense, but.
Well, I think that's a motion, Susan, that the motion will be for staff to direct SPAC and city staff to look into it.
And based off of a previous comment, we are the only arts commission. So I would say that we are the ones who would make that motion based off of that.
I think maybe a better middle ground would be to, as an advisory committee, make some recommendations on areas where you feel that there need to be changes. How those changes get implemented based on whether or not it be an amendment to the code or policies and procedures, budgeting. I think that's the work that then needs to be looked at by staff to make sure we're doing it right. I can't tell you whether or not this amendment to the code is a legally sufficient and appropriate change to be made during the course of this meeting. So If you believe that there are things that need to change, and again, I was not anticipating having this discussion today. Recommendations from the commission on the direction that it would like to see regarding public art, I see as one thing. The specific implementation of that by the city to achieve whatever goals that the council wants to adopt and move forward based on the recommendation, I think that is more appropriately the work of city staff to come forward with how, depending on what the council wants to do. And I'm sorry, I didn't realize I didn't have my camera on. What the council wants to do to implement whatever of the SPAC's vision it wants to take on. I think that would probably be better work for city staff to look at and come back saying, hey, based on the recommendation of SPAC, the council said we want to expand the public mural program or this or that. Bring us back your proposals for achieving that. And it might be a conversation with SPAC, but the specific how we're going to achieve that, I think is more appropriately the work of city staff.
Great. Thanks,
So
Mark. That makes sense.
So would we want to, in some future point, have a city staff member discussion with whichever city staff member that'd be appropriate with?
I don't know how it'll fare out. I know, and I'm just working through experience. There was some stuff done regarding permits for events within parks that went through the Salem Park and Recreation Committee. They came up with a list of their recommendations, and then they worked together with Robert Chandler to put together some specific things that then went to council. So in that situation, it was a dialogue between Salem Park and Recreation and staff that went through council. I can't say for certain how that will ferret out specifically here.
Okay. So it sounds like what we need to do is figure out how to craft a motion to ask staff into looking at options for possibly increasing public art funding.
So I'm a believer in lessons learned from others, and I am not in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to drive a little bit outside of my legal lane here, and I'm simply going to say what I saw happen out of another. What the Salem Park and Recreations Commission did is they drafted a letter to the city council on the issue of some changes that they wanted to see happening regarding permits and event permits and things like that, and sent that to the council. It seems to me that here this commission is wanting to do it as part of its annual report. If you see the link to the annual report that you're providing, then that is fine as well. What they did in the Salem Park and Recreations Board, because it has to, as you're identifying, be approved by the whole, is they had one person work on a draft based on sort of the outline of the conversation that was being had. Didn't distribute the draft because we can't do that, but then came back and said, all right, based on what I understood here, here's my draft of this. What do you all agree? Or maybe it's, we agree with how you've written A, B, C, and D, but we want these changes to E and F. Does everyone agree? Yes, make those changes, and then we approve of those changes that it be sent on to the city commission. That's one way of doing it. Or you can have all of these conversations here and make those changes. But the draft of whatever you're doing shouldn't be discussed and distributed outside of the public forum.
Okay. Um,
Excuse me.
so I guess sort of backing out of this for a minute, then, I feel like we need to think a little bit more about how to encapsulate some of these ideas into into engage staff to, if I'm understanding you correctly, Mark, to kind of express at a more high level some things that we would be interested in exploring, and then asking staff to draft possible responses, which we could then look at in this forum.
I'm not quite understanding that last part, and I don't want to lead you down a particular place, and then it sounds like the commission wants to see an increase in the amount of funding for public art, and that how that public art funding is distributed be changed from its current perceptions. I haven't looked at the issue of that second part. If the commission as a whole wants to put something together to send to council about its position for there to be a need for an increase in public art funding, then that is something that you can do. Would need to be approved by the commission. That issue of changes to
I understand that part. Yep. I was just putting that in there as a discussion point for this group to kind of identify where public funding is currently coming from, and, you know, a possible solution. But I understand that is not probably in our purview. So I think one thing I guess I would be interested in, Keith, is asking if we can do an analysis of where public art isn't in the city of Salem. I feel like that's a data point that we as the commission should be aware of. Sort of, where is public art concentrated, and are there areas in the city that don't have public art, whether that's city funded or community funded or business funded. Is that something that staff could engage with?
Yes, absolutely. And the large portion of it is done in terms of the inventory via using GIS.
Okay.
Can I just back up for a second? I think what I was understanding Mark to say maybe was that we could identify priorities of things that we would like to see changed and amended and added to. And that once we identify those things, then we could make recommendations, or not even recommendations, we could present that to city staff and say, this is what we see people wanting more of or less of, or we want to overcome some hurdles. We want to have things be done differently. How do we do that? This is what the commission is saying. You know, we want feedback on that. And then city staff would come back with recommendations. Well, you want more city funding. And you're suggesting that it might be able to come from sidewalks and whatever. And then they would say, okay, number one, if that's one of your priorities, then maybe a letter, would be sent, and then to council, whatever it is that Mark explained. And then maybe one of our other priorities would be making murals more accessible to be done by community members. And then we'd say, this is what we're hearing. People want to do murals in the community that don't want to have to do easements and the whole thing. This is what we're hearing. Then we present that as another item to city staff and say, what can we do about that? Can something change? And maybe we want to say, we see this entity as more of an advisory capacity for other things other than just, public art procurement. We'd like to be see more involvement in XYZ. How do we do that? So I don't know if that's what Mark was saying, but to me, that would make sense. And also, you know, going back to getting feedback from the community on what things that they would like to see in terms of the arts. And maybe it's not a meeting, maybe it's a survey. And I don't know if you know, city staff would put together a survey based on our concerns and what we're hearing, and then we can gather that information and then make our list of priorities to what we would present to city staff for their recommendation on what we could do about it.
I guess, again, driving outside of my lane a little bit as legal advisor, and I want to pick up on what Commissioner, is it NAPAC? Am I saying that
Yes,
correctly?
yes.
What you said. In the grand scheme of things, there are sort of two ways that I think you can do this. Is one, you can start with something to the city council saying, here is our vision and concerns. We want to advise you that, and then see where it goes from there. Or you can start with city staff saying, here's our vision and concerns. City staff, what are your thoughts? How can we achieve these changes? Does city staff support these changes? What changes does city staff support? What changes does city staff not support? And work with city staff to then develop its recommendations or whatever. And then some of the things may need to go to council, obviously, funding, and that would be a budgetary issue, and that would need to go through the budgetary process. Some, if there's needs to be code changes, those would need to go to city council. And some things you may get a sense of what city staff will support and what it won't support, but ultimately that's city staff's position, and council may have a different position, and council will direct in the end. So it's sort of, where do you want to go? And do you want to start at city council and then see what they want to bring down to staff, or do you want to work collaboratively with staff and sort of work that way, and then come together with staff if there is anything that needs to be taken to council and go to council together that way? That's just sort of, I don't want strategically, but sort of in working with the city for a while, some different paths on how you want to go forward from here.
Thanks, Mark. That's that's helpful. I guess my inclination is the latter. Like, so, you know, this presentation, this thing we're talking about, I guess it would be appropriate to ask staff to review it and comment on it, you know, and see if, you know, how does staff feel about Salem having a public art vision? Is there already one? Is that a need that staff agrees with? And how does staff, what is staff's feeling about increasing arts funding, ignoring the, and I'm happy to rework that deck if that's the right thing to do. And we as a commission can come to consensus on what we want to actually submit to staff for review, which doesn't have to be this discussion deck. It can be something different. Does that sound, and then that would be, we would then make a motion to engage staff with, do we have to do that in that way, or can we just look at Keith and engage staff as an outcome of this meeting?
Is that a question to me?
Or Keith?
I'm already engaged, so.
Yeah, I think we can do it through dialogue, right?
Yes.
So can we ask you to take a look at that presentation and comment on it? And, you know.
Could I actually make a different recommendation?
Sure.
I think we should make sure that the commission itself has identified what it would like to see changed, and then say to staff, here are our areas of, I don't want to say concern, here's our vision for the future. I think that's a better way of putting it. These are the things that we visioning would like to see changed. Staff, what are your thoughts on getting from here to there. It could be, do you agree with the need for this change, or assuming that there is this need for the change, what would be your proposal for getting to the next place? But I think it's important that the commission be giving a unified, I don't want to, that the commission has agreed that these are the points that we want some feedback from staff on for.
Okay. So I guess pulling out the key concepts of that presentation, which again, I think are trying to reflect the strategic work that we did with Courtney. I'm going to put this to the commission. Proposal is that we ask the city about, we ask city staff to comment on a unified vision for public art for the city, whether or not we have one or need one, and the need to diversify public art into the neighborhoods, presumably needing arts funding. I don't know if we need to write that up differently, if we can just do it in this discussion, if other people have comments on that. And I'm happy to table this for a while. I feel like we're getting kind of off our agenda here and probably need to move things along. We could pick this up again if people want to keep talking about it.
I think we need to be as specific as possible of what I'm hearing from Mark, and also just for city staff. I mean, I don't know if they are really in a position to really project whether the city has a broad vision like that. I think if we kind of make a list of some very specific things that we would like to see changed and addressed, not as broad, and I appreciate your broad view, Zach, but I think that at this point, maybe we need to just identify some very specific things. And maybe we should, I did a kind of a quick dive, not a deep dive, into what other arts commissions do. And I actually sent Keith a document from the Oregon City Art Commission, which really lays out their, what their role is. And it's a very actually user-friendly kind of way of a presentation of what they do and what they don't do. I think I personally would need to do a little more research on what other how other cities deal with their arts commissions, to get a picture of what I personally would, envision us to be for Salem, and then kind of go from there, and also incorporate the things that I'm hearing from my neighbors, about things like murals and other input that we might want to have in the city. So I think tabling this for now, and kind of maybe each of us have a little homework and kind of put together some kind of a list, as if we see of what the priorities, very specific priorities of what we see, things that we might want to see change, and maybe talk to people in the arts community. If we're not going to do a survey or something like that, just kind of talk to people, find out what their perception is of what they want to see the Arts Commission be, and then kind of work down from there. I mean, it's I don't think we can get anything resolved today. So I don't know. Does that sound like something people might want to do?
Can I ask one question? I apologize, Commissioner. I was not present when Courtney came in and helped with some visioning. Did she give some recommendations on next steps?
I don't think so. I'd have to go back and look at her notes. I think she summarized the conversation, but I don't know that she issued any recommendations, but we can go back and
summarize the conversation. You just a brief encapsulation of what.
Yeah.
I don't want to have Courtney have given you all some advice, and then I was not there for. I'm stepping into this conversation very late into the conversation, so it sounds like you had some assistance with Courtney on this visioning before?
Courtney presented to us the in a historical context of what she was involved in originally in SPAC, how they did they created a framework for kind of like a strategic plan or objectives for SPAC. The sense I got was that SPAC has completed all of that vision, all of those objectives in terms of getting the mural code down, getting the GIS inventory set up, partnerships with the library. All of those basic things are solid and stable. And I believe the next step was for this new commission to take another step forward and, re-envision what we would like, what they would
Okay.
like next.
So I get it. All right.
Yeah.
Now it's clicking. So then I'm going to stick with my recommended path. Develop your vision. And once you have what you develop your vision be, then have a conversation with staff saying, if this is our vision, how do we get there? And does staff support that vision? And if staff doesn't support it, then maybe they want to say, we understand where you're trying to get, but we would recommend adjusting your vision this way. And then you can revise or say no or whatever, and we can have that conversation. I think that would be my non-legal recommendation as to what I see as the path, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, then I guess
Oh.
maybe I could ask everyone, the commissioners, to, between now and the next meeting, think about that. Use the deck I provided. If it's of use to you, ignore it if it's not. And, let's come back together with notes on sort of what is our vision, whether it's what I wrote down or something else, and what are the issues, what are the things that we feel like need to be addressed. You've all got Courtney's notes. She has a few next steps, which are what we're talking about right now. In it, continue dialogue with SPAC, document the current state of the public art in Salem. Where is it? What's needed in the collection? Where could it be featured in our community? Just a subset of where is it? Gauge neighborhood interest, to your point, Susan. Invite input, identify gaps between the vision and the current state. And this is a question where I guess I'm, trying to feel my way through the semantics of this, but one thing I was trying to put forward in that presentation is I don't know that the city has a vision, and I don't know that it's SPAC's role to create a vision. Like,
I think Commissioner Hall, I think you made a nice connection to it. It is part of SPAC's role to create a vision, but that's
something I guess I'd like to work with staff on. Like, can we create a vision for ourselves? Can we empower ourselves with a vision? Because I don't want to overstep our boundaries, and but if we can, or if we need the blessing of council, or I want to work with staff to kind of.
I felt that Courtney's conversation kind of directed us to do that.
Okay.
That kind of work, and I think you laid it out nicely how it connects to the charge that SRC or that the art commission is required to do. But.
So let's.
Can I just say that I really support that, because in my looking at the public art that exists now, it didn't seem to me that it had a vision. It seemed to me that it was just a combination of things that have been donated at different points of time, and because they've been donated, became part of the public Salem's public art thing, and that to me isn't a vision. That's not thinking through how you want Salem to be represented through public art. So I think doing that and asking the appropriate relationship with staff seems like a very smart thing to do.
I'm just going to throw one other thing out there that, the definition of what public art is too. I mean, could it be, right now we've got a very locked in definition of what it is and what it needs to be. And could it be a dance performance? Could it be video? Could it be, augmented reality? So I think thinking, future ahead to the future where definitions of public art are changing and evolving, and we may as well try to incorporate that as well if we could.
Okay, so let's table this. Let's pick this up next time. Let's everyone do our homework, consider this conversation. We've got 20 minutes left scheduled for today. So let's move on to the mural program review. I guess I don't know, maybe Keith, do you have input on what that agenda top point is?
I'm sorry, I closed my agenda real quick.
Okay.
What was the?
It's number 6B, city's mural program review. Is that something?
Oh, that's Commissioner Napak wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if we
Okay.
have enough time right
I
now.
think that's just something we can fold into our next strategic discussion.
Okay.
Because there's a lot on there. I mean, I did just want to say that I was sort of heartened by all of the support for this mural that we just approved, but I was also disheartened at how many of them were citing that, oh, it was going to be taken down. We don't want it to be taken down. It would be a shame. I mean, people really went out of their way to really write, especially some of them, very heartfelt letters, thinking that, they needed to really, really convince us that this was a good thing and that it shouldn't be taken down and that it's not advertising. And I'm concerned that whatever is that came from, it was a really negative way of the city or whomever approached them about what could be done with this, because it came from a negative place. And that's just a concern, something that I would definitely put on our list of, that there should be encouragement for murals, and there should be, solicitation of businesses doing murals, not threats that they're going to be taken down.
Well, Susan, the context behind that is that if it was not approved as a public mural, then it would fall under sign code. And under sign code, that is way too large for the building, and it would have to be removed. And so I think that was the crux of their where you got the negativity from.
I just wonder if there's a way to, when we're approaching people like that,
Yeah,
that it could be done in a different way.
Well, this is the last one that I know of that's existing in the city. So hopefully all the ones we have now will go through our process.
So we have some updates on the Library Foundation art collection. I don't know, are there
Commissioner Hull, I hate to interrupt again.
Yep.
Unless anybody else of the commissioners have any specific questions for me, I'm going to step out of the meeting at this time, if that's okay with the commission.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mark, for your.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you all for having me
Mark.
here today. You all have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
The update from the Library Art Foundation, there's no update except that in January, Kate Van Ummerson will be back. And we're going to continue discussions with getting that collection transferred over.
And just to recap for the new commissioners, the library has maintained a separate art collection, and they are asking to merge that art collection with the city's art collection for sort of management, maintenance, and tracking purposes. And I don't think there hasn't been a lot of objection to that on the commission so far. That's the context for that agenda point. Update on the Salem Public Art Collection story map.
Yes, I'm working with GIS. Someone, I think maybe it might have been Commissioner Emmerich, was talking about adding if we can add the boundaries for the historic districts, which shows where murals cannot be put together. And then also following up with our discussion today, I'm going to engage them again to see where we can find, I guess, art deserts or wherever our inventory of art is not, where we don't have inventory in the city.
I think that might help us in our, discussions about whether we want to, how we want to engage with staff around the discussion of funding. And, at some point, proliferating public art is a volume issue. There needs to be more of it. So how do we get more of it? And part of that discussion is where is it and where is it missing? And so that'll be an important piece of that discussion, I think.
Yep. And now we can add the public murals to it. We have a couple.
Yeah, which are distinct from street paintings too. And I think we should, if you look at the code, the street painting's kind of tacked on at the bottom, but it's a different, I think we should start thinking about these different kind of, workflows and programs that have slightly different. It's probably worth, if you haven't, it's probably worth going and reading. The code talks about what the criteria are for SPAC to acquire art for city buildings, which is a different set of criteria than murals.
Mm-hmm.
The two may overlap, but you see language around the acquisition for city buildings about, high quality artwork, and that kind of language is missing from the mural and street painting stuff. I think probably by design, right? Because obviously you're trying to encourage the community to fund these things. And so you have a different kind of criteria. Anyway, it's worth going and looking at that and keeping that in mind as we go through more of these discussions.
And it's on our webpage, the SPAC webpage.
We have a potential SPAC field trips update.
I haven't received any word from Chris in terms of her contacts. Previous meeting, she said she had contacts, but I believe the last one, someone left the position. So
Okay.
I can follow up with her, but if other commissioners have ideas about it, let me know. And then what we'll have to do is get the Peter Fernandez, the director's approval for us to meet offsite.
Okay. Maintenance updates. The drummer and rooster.
Drum and Rooster contract is still, it hasn't been finalized or anything because I think we're going to incorporate that into we're waiting to see if the bond measure passes. When the bond measure passes, we'll be able to identify a portion of that to the civic center seismic. And I believe Alan Dannon, the engineer responsible for it, said that there might be room to plan for reincorporating the drummer and rooster into the design.
And for okay. For the new commissioner's context, again, drummer and rooster is a sculpture, 2 figures by Robert Hess, who's a longtime art professor at Willamette and artist working in Salem, originally sited in the Civic Center in a reflecting, sort of pond-like environment, was removed from that environment at some point and was on display in the convention center where they suffered some damage. And so there's a contract pending with Lee Immonen, who is a sculpture professor at Layton Community College and is a former student of the artist, to repair it. But within the context of repairing it, there's now some discussion of perhaps relocating it sort of back where it was, which would impact how it gets repaired because it might be subject to sitting in water. Just for everyone's context. Maintenance updates on Good Sense.
Yes, I know Commissioner Hull wanted to talk about some of our obligations in terms of maintenance of some of these of our artwork. I currently don't have anything scheduled for the cleaning of it. There's just some debris on the top that can be washed off with water and a brush. However, I don't have a water source yet, and I have not worked on obtaining one, but I can move forward with that.
Okay. let us know if you need some labor to help you.
Will do.
New business, collection management system for a city arts collection.
Yeah, there
That-
was some discussion.
Go ahead, sir.
We currently have a system, an inventory system. The system is Excel sheet, basically with hyperlinks to photos. But I believe that there are management systems out there, and I think it might be a good discussion for SPAC to have in terms of when we acquire if and when we acquire the library's collection as well. So, yep, that's a discussion we can have.
That's something that I can provide some context for too when the time comes. It's collection management systems are something I deal with all the time through Xgallery. So if that's of interest to folks. Art loan agreements at the library, OASF. I know that was being addressed. Maybe, do you have an update on that, Keith?
Yes, the last show was with Diane Beals, and she signed it directly with our legal department. But I believe now OSAF is the signatory on the loan agreements, and there is now an additional or another. I think is Nicholas Sloy. They have their exhibit in the library art hall.
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet.
So that got resolved.
And so,
Yeah.
it got resolved, and now now we're going to ensure that all the contracts moving forward will be signed by OSAF and not the artist.
We had talked about this. I think we already agreed to this, to move the meeting time to 2:30 in the afternoons. So if there's no other objection to that, I think this is the last meeting that was scheduled for this time. And so moving forward, we will move to 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yes.
Unless there's any
just to let you know, I know this is a good time. A lot of the commissioners agree that this works. I will set it up. However, I will not be here on that day to welcome you all. So I'll find someone to run the show.
Just for that day, or moving forward?
No, just for that day.
Okay.
Just for that day. Yeah.
Very good.
In an
Good.
airplane.
Don't want to lose you.
If we have something
No.
that we want you to share a screen or something, you'll let us know who to send it to, or we can send it to you and you'll just.
Yeah, what I'd prefer is if you have any materials you would like the commissioners to see before the meeting, if you can send it to me the Tuesday before the 1 week Tuesday before, that helps me put it into the agenda packet. But if you do have some last minute ones, you can email it to me and then I will be able to share. I'll have it available for the person to share screen.
So if we were gonna, each of us kind of do our lists of the things that we had talked about, is that something that we could send you and you could compile it into one document?
Yes, and yes, I can do that. And that doesn't have to. Yeah, send it to me and I will compile it for you all. And I won't have to post that since that's our working documents. We won't post that as a public part of the agenda packet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I just, along those lines of documents, I don't know, can we move to commissioner? I don't know if it's a commissioner comment or an action, I guess, action item, I don't know. In any case, I'd like to request that any documents that are sent to us, decks or letters or things like that, be in a PDF format. Because especially on my older machines, Microsoft products just take forever to load, and then I have to have a lot of products applications open at once. And it just, if it could all be PDF, then it would just be one, application. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I'd appreciate that.
So for action items, I think, as Susan just reminded us, if everyone could, in the context of our conversation with Mark and Keith, think about submitting some information back to Keith regarding the visioning discussion, reread Courtney's notes. You can look at the deck I sent, however you want to format that. And we're going to try to, with the goal being that we're going to work with city staff to, I guess, come up with a vision for our group and understand how and whether that needs to be approved by council or not, based on staff recommendation, and then identify kind of our priorities moving forward. And I think, you know, I'll ask you again to sort of consider the framework I put out there, not or comment on it or tear it apart, but I think having some sort of framework that we operate with just to guide our own discussions will be useful, so that when we're talking about whatever initiative we're talking about, we sort of know where we're hanging that. Like that's part of our, you know, our making things known initiative, communicating and managing the website and whatever. That's part of our, because I think it'll just help us kind of give us a place to put it on the shelf, I guess, as we continue to talk about it.
I
Yeah.
would just recommend that you do take a look at, if you have time, at what other arts commissions do in other cities. And that one that I did find in Oregon City was really informative. Just, you know, if you go, you know, art commissions, and it kind of pops up. And
Is that
Susan-
something we got sent around? Do we have that in our document?
I did send it as a PDF to you, Keith. I don't know if you can distribute that.
I will distribute that after the meeting to the group.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you. I guess moving on to, sorry, go ahead.
I just had some shameless plugs to do about publicity, but I don't know when you want to do that.
Yeah, well, this is commissioner comment time, so I would say now.
Okay. This Saturday is Open Studios at the Mill. And I have a studio there. It's at the Willamette Heritage Center from 1 to 4. It's the first time we're doing it on a Saturday. So all of the businesses will be open. Also, Zach's mom, Bonnie Ho, has a studio there. And then she also has an incredible exhibition that's opening at Salem Art Association called Marking Time. That's opening the night before on this Friday night. And also, if you haven't seen the Nick and Sloy exhibition at the convention center and also at the library, it's called Wishful Thinking. And I highly recommend seeing their joyful, wonderful, creative work.
That saves me from having to do a shameless plug for my family. So thank you, Susan.
Yep.
Anyone else have any action items or comments for the group?
Yeah, can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so I don't know if how much we're allowed to like get involved in social media and whatnot, but I feel like drafting up a survey to the community from SPAC that we can all share would be really great. That way we have actual feedback from the community that we can work into the vision that we're trying to create and then present it to city council instead of just going to city council like, this is what we kind of want, and then backtracking to the community. So once we have that, share it through social media, because I feel like that's like our #1 tool nowadays. Everybody's on there. It's the easiest. People can do it from their phone. You don't actually have to like go up to somebody's house or business. But yeah, anyways, so we create a survey through SPAC, share that, get the feedback from there, whether it be through email or DMs, whatever it may be, put it together. And that way we can signal out the areas that I guess we get the most traction from, that people want to see the most things from, but we specify what they want to see, themes that they want to see. It could be sculptures, art, themes in art. And once we have that, we can like focus on specific buildings and then take that to city council and see what our obstacles are, or if we can even do it. And then from there, if we get all that approved, then we do a call for artists, and the artists will come And then from there, we'll just have our criterias for them to meet. And it'll be pretty easy. That's how my friends in other cities do it. And it just bypasses so much headaches. Like, it's almost like we put it out there and they just come. So
That's a great, thank you for that,
Yeah.
Eduardo. Can we add that into the action items, which would be specifically if everyone could propose the questions that we might ask in a survey, or that's the format I'm familiar with, is something like SurveyMonkey or something like that, where you ask people to answer specific questions. Like, so what are the questions we want to ask of the community? What are your top interests in public art in Salem? What kind of public art do you want to see? So if all of us can submit our questions, then we could work with Keith to kind of formalize the list of things we want to ask people, and then we can, to your point, put out the request.
So,
As far as the social media goes, that's another thing that I would put on our list, is how can we directly communicate with people through, about art in Salem, public art in Salem, because right now we don't have an avenue. We don't have social media coming right from us. It has to come from the city. So, and they have limited presence on social media also. So that's another thing that I would definitely put on the list of what we should say is a concern or something we would like to see.
Keith, would you have to then review everything and have it formalized through the city for us to then act as this coming from the city? Like, it wouldn't come straight from us, essentially.
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. That's what we would have to ask. I mean, I know that neighborhood services, who represent the neighborhood associations, they send out, or they post on social media, things that are going on in the neighborhood. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. I mean, we've raised it before, and it's kind of a little muddy as to
Well,
what the story is.
the city has a public communications team, and so any survey, if you're talking about the surveys, yes, they would have to be vetted through our channels, and then they'll be distributed that way. But regarding posts of the city they do post things, but it's just the content that they're not getting. I mean, if a commissioner were to give me one, if it was assigned, each commissioner every week will give me something to post, that would make it easy for me to do a request, versus my communications team trying to develop something that they're not familiar with. There's nothing stopping individual commissioners from posting things about SPAC. It's just that we do not have a specific channel for SPAC, if that makes any sense. But like, if we get a schedule, like this time of year we do 4 posts in the month, 1 a week. If we have a schedule set up, our communications team will have no problem sending, distributing that. It's just the content, like every content creators,
So if we had a survey, let's say if we had it somewhere on the city website, then we could send out social media saying, hey, go to the city website and
Correct.
fill out the survey.
So yeah, if by next meeting everyone could include a list, into Keith, of questions that they think would be useful to get community input, and what kind of input we want or need, then we can kind of collate those and see if there are any gaps, and then we could put that together as a survey and start that effort. I don't think, Susan, that has to replace an in-person town hall thing. It could be a supplement to it if you still want to pursue that. But I like the idea of Eduardo's point of, that's where people are. They're on their phones. So let's try to get it out to them where they are. It's part of our local. It's our local initiative.
Like it.
Okay. Are there other comments? We're kind of at the end of our time for today. We have our next meeting on December 14th at 2:30 for the first time. Keith will not be there, so we'll have someone else presumably to help us. We have a little bit of homework.
Mhm.
If there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for participating, and it's a good robust discussion.
Good meeting. Thank you. And thanks for all your hard work on that presentation, Zach. It really gave us a good jump start.
Yeah, feel free to use it as it's helpful. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Take good care, everyone.
See you
Bye.
out and about. Thanks, you all.
Bye-bye.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Eduardo, for the comment. That was really good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take it easy.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving.